Matt Tate covers KU and everything. Sports editor, KU basketball beat writer, Lawrence Journal World, and also at KU Sports, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. I'll tell you, Matt, thanks for your time. And I know everyone knows what KU's been through with football, and we want to make sure before we get off the segment that we do touch on the Big 12 men's tournament or men's schedule that came out in basketball as well. I like your coach. I look, with what he's done at the various levels he's been. He made Buffalo tough. I love the way they ran the football. I know that might be some bumps in the road, but so far, a late start. What do you think of him?
Yeah, so far, I mean, he seems to be exactly what Kansas needed. He's a no-frills kind of guy. He's a football coach. He's very focused and very, determined to stick to his system and doesn't deviate from that very much. But he also has a little bit of personality and a lot of fire and, values things that are important in this game, like toughness and discipline and accountability and all of that. So I know these players have really taken a liking to him already and are willing to buy into what he's about. And it's not showing up exactly like they wanted on the scoreboard just yet, but nobody thought it would. I mean, this is not a let's fix it in 3 games type of situation. This is if you're lucky, you can fix it in 3 years type of situation. And so I think everybody understands that. I think for once, the fans even kind of understand that. Fans are never going to be called patient. You guys know that, but there is a little bit of a willingness to let this play out and to kind of give him some time from the fan base, because they do see things they like, and they see this guy is a football coach who knows what he's doing and has a plan and is on the path to sticking to it.
So at least 3 years he's got before the Wolves come to his door.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's always nice to say, and it sounds good. And a lot of times in the past, as you guys probably remember, it used to be you could give a guy 5 years, and that's unheard of nowadays. I mean, that's like 3 coaching cycles, really. So I think 3 years would be fair. I think he'll get more than that if he needs it. But I do think if you're looking to be completely fair and you're a Kansas fan, you got to at least give him these first 3 years to just see what it looks like, see if there's progress, see how he's building it. And I do think, time will tell, but based on what I've seen and learned so far, I do think that if they're able to do that, they'll like what they see. So, it's not a bowl game anytime soon, but this fan base is not even really talking in terms of bowl games. There's some of those guys out there on Twitter and message boards that are throwing their mouths around and running wild and thinking about it. But for the most part, the bar is so incredibly low here that all these people want is let's just see them be competitive in the fourth quarter of a bunch of games. And if they could do that this year, next year, the year after, I think that that would be enough to bring some people along for the ride.
So, Matt, I saw a little bit of Jason Bean, KU quarterback, when he was at North Texas, a dynamic player. I know he brings some electricity in the run game as their leading rusher right now. The passing game's a bit more iffy, and accuracy can be a bit problematic for him. But what kind of a juice has he brought in terms of being a weapon and somebody that can, get a little something going offensively for them?
Well, yeah, he looks like, a totally different player than anything they've had here in a while. And I mean, he's got track speed. I think he ran a 10-300 in high school, and that's flying, and he's able to use that out there on the field. He makes good decisions when he runs, and for the most part, he makes good decisions when he drops back to throw. He's one of those kids that even though he can kill you with his legs, he'll tell you he wants to be a quarterback. He wants to stand in that pocket and let things develop and get the ball downfield to his playmakers. And, now when you're rebuilding and your offensive line has other ideas, it doesn't always go that way. So he's had to take off a bunch of times already this year, but it's a weapon. It's a legitimate weapon. It's something that I know the coaches want to play more too. But at the same time, they're trying to do everything they can to make sure he doesn't get hurt, because they've got something with him. He's a kid that could be here for another 3 years, 2 more after this one. And if there's anything other than coaching continuity that the program has been missing over the last decade, it's continuity at that position too. So there's a lot to like there, and I think that helps. I think that helps the fan base feel better about this thing. I mean, if they were good in 6 or 7 other positions, but the quarterback was still a problem, I think they would be grumbling a little more already. But the fact that they look like, they've got a guy who can play the position and do it at a level that gets you an advantage. I mean, he can actually go out and make plays and score points by himself and keep you in games by himself. Obviously, it takes all 11. They know that. Everybody knows that. But he's a difference maker back there for him, and he's been off to a good start. I mean, the cool part is I think both Bean and his coaches believe that now that they've seen what he can do in the first couple of games and, kind of head on a swivel, things flying, still trying to get used to this whole thing, that's a pretty good place to set the baseline. And now they're expecting, hey, that can't be all you've got. Let's see what you can do from here. And I think they believe that his best football is definitely still ahead of him, and that he's got a chance to continue to improve not only over the course of the season, but week by week.
Matt, I watched and looked at the depth chart for KU, and obviously with Leipold's time at Buffalo, I watched them against Nebraska this past weekend, and they actually 28-3 or whatever the score was. But Kansas ended up being Buffalo West, and Baylor's got an offensive lineman that was a starter for them, that starts for them as well.
And a good one.
And a really good one as well. And I know that the guys at KU are pretty good. What does that say? I know coaches sometimes bring players with them, especially the transfer portal. All those rules have changed. That says quite a bit that they wanted to come play for him, even in Kansas.
No, there's no question. That was the biggest part. I mean, it is still a Big 12 program. It's still a Power 5 school. It's still, all of that stuff that gets you more exposure and things like that. But to a man, those guys that came with him said that, while that stuff was nice and certainly part of their decision, the number one factor was that they wanted to be around him more. And not just him, but the coordinators and position coaches that he brought with him. I mean, he brought 5 or 6 guys that were up there with him on the coaching staff too. And so I think that was a huge part of it. But I think that in terms of how that benefits Kansas, it's instant credibility. It's instant culture injection. It's instantly bringing something that you didn't have and injecting it into the program that desperately needed it. And so it would take 60 or 70 of those guys to turn those things around overnight, So 6, 7, 8, 9 guys isn't quite that much and all of that. But what you have is you've got a little bit of that flavor and that culture in just about every meeting room and just about every position group out there on the practice field. And so those guys are able to show the guys who were here and the newcomers as well, here's the expectation. Here's how we do it. Here's what the coaches expect. Here's how they're going to coach you. And you got to get on board. So I think it's helped. I mean, the advantage that they've gained in that department certainly was offset probably tenfold by the fact that this coaching staff wasn't hired until May and didn't have spring football and wasn't able to go through, that kind of situation with these guys. So really what you've got is, you've got a program that's putting sophomores and freshmen out there against the varsity, right? And that's kind of how that feels in high school. And those kids take their lumps and those young teams that have to play young at the high school level going up against those varsity teams, it's never real pretty early, but there's always a time, 2-3 years down the road where that group that's been together a long time, they kind of have their day in the sun when that turns. And so, it's 100 and some man roster here. And so it's not quite as easy, nor is it as given, especially with the transfer portal and all that stuff. But I think that's definitely a part of their building plan. And it's not just go play a bunch of young guys to do it. It's just as much about reps, right? It's some of these guys who are even seniors or super seniors or juniors. Well, they've played football. They've played college football, but the problem is they've only repped in Lance Leipold's system, 200 times now, where they're going up against guys at other schools who have repped in those systems 2,500, 3,000, 4,000, whatever it is, So that, to me, that's a big hurdle that they just can't do anything about. And so they're going to have to catch a break here and there or 10 breaks here and there to even hope to have, wins and losses type success this season. But I really don't think they're focused on that. I really don't think they're too worried about that. Of course they want to win, but they are trying to build something here and they have the right approach. And I think they've got their kids bought in.
Matt, what have you seen as the biggest differences between this and any other coaching staff over the last, 4 or 5 hires?
I think the biggest thing, because it's easy to look back at all of those that didn't work and say, well, they were a joke, or they didn't do this, or they didn't do that, and that's certainly true in some cases. But I think the biggest thing that this group seems to bring to the table that none of those in the past did is just what I mentioned a minute ago, and that's having a clear plan. I mean, whether you go back to Leipold at Wisconsin Whitewater or his time at Buffalo where he was successful both places, he's doing the same things here that he did at those places. And the reason he's doing that is because he built both of those places into pretty good programs. And so he knows what he does, what his coaches do, the system they want to run, the culture they want to create. I mean, he knows that works, and if it's given time to work, can lead to success. And so you just saw from minute one that this was a guy who he wasn't trying to figure it out on the fly, or he wasn't trying to retrofit something to, well, I used to do this, but I can't do that, so I have to do this, and I'm at Kansas now, so we'll tweak it like this, and kind of figuring that out on the fly. He came in here and said, no, you hired me for who I am and for what I do, and I'm going to do it. And give me the time, and we'll get this thing turned around. And so, that's to me, that's the biggest difference. I mean, that's admirable too. It's not easy to do because everybody wants it to turn overnight, but everybody should know by now that it doesn't turn overnight. So I like that approach. I think he should be commended for that. Granted, it's only 2 games into his tenure, and he's 1-1 right now. So, we'll see. If he ends up 1-11, does he still have that same cool, calm, and collected demeanor? Does he get rattled? Does that force him off his mark? I would guess it's not going to, but this is a tough job, and so we have to wait and see before we celebrate it too hard.
I want to ask you a basketball question, but you said 1-11. Matt Rule had 1-11. That team was very young,
right.
And then the next year they kind of turned the wheels in 7-6, and the next thing you know they're playing inches away from a Big 12 championship. So it can happen even when sometimes people think it can't. Now, I looked at the Big 12 men's basketball schedule. Obviously, Kansas has reloaded. Baylor, the defending national champions. Chris Beard at Texas. Oklahoma has Moser now, the head coach as well. And we know what Bob Huggins, all of that. But it looks like the schedule in February is a beast. Texas, Kansas, Baylor, they all have these opposite games wherever, like Kansas plays at Baylor and also hosts Baylor in February. Baylor plays Texas twice in February. I think KU plays at Texas in February. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, you're exactly right. KU plays Texas and Baylor, both of them that month twice. And then I trust what you're looking at with the others. So I think that's exciting. I mean, we put out a preseason magazine every year for the basketball program, and I did a short thing in there. I mean, we did a million things, but one of the short features in there was sort of the 5 most intriguing games on the schedule this season. And they have a game with Kentucky. They have the Champions Classic against Michigan State to open the season. Those are both always going to be on there. But those Baylor and Texas games, I mean, those are on there as well. I mean, you're looking at a couple of top 10 teams. You're looking at the defending national champions. The last time Baylor came to Lawrence, they took a loss, which didn't happen hardly at all last year, as you guys know. So, I just thought those 2 games have to be on the schedule. And for some reason, I limited to 5. I should have probably limited it to the top 7 most intriguing, because those home and homes they'll be thrilling. I mean, with both programs and all 3 of those programs. So, it's phenomenal. I mean, I think now that it looks very much like Scott Drew's got that thing humming, and not just, a couple of good years, but built for sustained success well into the future, especially with as hot as he's been recruiting. It's definitely going to be one of those things that rivalry that's kind of been bubbling over the years. And there have been some good KU Baylor matchups. There's no doubt about it. But frankly, I don't think we've seen anything yet. I mean, I think what that looks like in the next 5-10 years is going to be really exciting, because I don't think either of those programs is going to drop off one bit. And if Chris Beard can do what he did at Texas, he's going to be right there in that mix. And you're going to talk about flip a coin 3 times and try to figure out who the preseason favorite is every year, because it's going to be one of those 3, and they're probably going to be picked 1 through 3 every preseason. And when they get together, whether that's 2 times in the regular season or they meet again in the postseason, Those are going to be absolute battles and a lot of fun and must-see TV and marquee games. I mean, that's just how good all three of those programs are right now, or at least when you consider what Beard can make Texas, they're in that mix too. But right now, it's just KU and Baylor. And so sign me up. I'd take 18 of those games this year.
Yeah,
I don't need to watch them play K-State. I don't need to watch them play TCU. Let's watch Kansas, Baylor, Kansas, Texas, Baylor, Texas. Let's watch that 18 times. I'd be all in on that.
Your president was on the expansion committee, the Big 12. I believe we had Mac Rhodes on. He's on with us every week. And you know that obviously everyone was like, what the, you know what, back in late July when all hell broke loose, Matt. And now the conference has stabilized. It's kind of a survivor conference. It finds its ways, although sometimes you wonder why they wait so long. What is the feeling? I know the Big Ten, I know that's smoke, and I know KU's got some clout. But your thoughts about where they are, and does it appear as if KU is completely on board with the new conference moving forward?
Well, gosh, yes, it does. But ask me that question a year from now or 2 years from now, and you may get a different answer. That's just the nature of the beast, right? So, but I don't think they're doing any, song and dance here. I mean, I think they are committed to this conference, and I think they are committed to making it as strong as it can be, because the future or the other options are all uncertain right now, and nothing is given. And so as much as the fan base up here really, really wants to see KU in the Big Ten, it may never happen. They may never get the opportunity to go. They may never get asked to go. They may never want to go, and so you can only focus on what's in front of you and what you have going right now. And so to me, they would be foolish. Anybody in this conference right now would be foolish to not try to build and build and build and make this thing as attractive as it can be, because at least for a while, they're going to need that attractive, resume to shop around and to show to these television networks and their partners and things like that, hey, we're still worth giving a boatload of money. So here's why, here's how, we're part of it. Let's go. And so I think that, you couldn't pin me down and make me say anything forever at any part of this college athletics landscape right now. I just don't think we're at that point anymore. I mean, frankly, I wish they would do some sort of mega deal with all the television networks that said, here's the deal. If you're a Power 5 school, you're going to get X amount of dollars. It's going to be a ton. You're going to get $40 million a year, and we're going to make it worth your while, and you're going to be on all the big networks, and it's going to be great. And the reason we're going to do that and guarantee that to every last one of you is because we're going to take our conferences and we're going to go back to geography, and we're going to retrofit these things and make them look like they should. And I know we're past that. I know it'll never happen, but as much as I think it's cool to have Central Florida or BYU in the mix, it's also odd to me. It just that doesn't really scream conference togetherness and all of that. So that kind of notion and the idea that that's the world we live in now makes me believe none of that's ever coming back. None of that way of the past or how it used to be or anything like that. So I think that, to answer your question, I know I kind of went on a tangent there, but
it's good.
To answer your question, I think they're absolutely, committed to doing. I think the way KU is looking at it is we are committed to doing what's best for Kansas 100% of the time. And if in 2, 3, 5 years that means going to the Big Ten because the Big Ten invites them, then that's what they'll do then. But that's not the case today. So right now, what's best for Kansas is to make this conference that they're in and that they've been a huge part of as strong as they can make it. And I think Kansas has an opportunity. I mean, obviously the basketball program is one of the most marquee programs in the entire conference, if not the marquee program in the entire conference after Oklahoma and Texas leave. So they have an opportunity to kind of step into that light a little bit and say, hey, we're kind of up here at the top and we can guide this thing and we can show strength and we can show success and we can help everybody else come along to this level as well. And there's obviously others throughout all the sports. We're just talking basketball there, of course, but there's some football powers in there still, and they're bringing a couple in, and there's some obviously really good softball and baseball and soccer and track programs and so on down the list. So I think that, I think that's where they're at. They of course want to do what's best for Kansas. That's what every school in this conference should want to do. And right now, the best thing for Kansas is that the Big 12 is alive and stable, and everything has kind of calmed down. And now you see what happens every month or every year from here. And hopefully it's nothing quite as crazy. But it makes for good reading. It makes for good coverage. It makes for good traffic on our websites. It's pretty wild to watch people follow that stuff.
Matt, thank you, man. Good stuff. A lot of truth serum and a lot of things you said. Matt Tate from the Lawrence Journal World covers KU sports and covers them very, very well. There was one at the very end, a chat from Gary Lewis. This is a strong segment. Matt's expressing how tons of college football fans feel about the regionalities being broken up with a lot of that going on.
I don't think that that's something to rule out in the far future. I don't think we're anywhere close to that being the case now, obviously, because it's just expanding and going further apart. But, who's to say 15, 20 years down the road that that's not a realization that everybody comes to suddenly of like, man, we're doing a lot of traveling and a lot of why are we doing this again? And so we will see. But I do think there are a lot of people that feel that way.
I've said it for a long time. I don't think it's in football. Football, nobody's going to notice the travel. Football has a few trips. They don't do anything twice in 1 week. Where it's going to get hanky for people is, if you have to go to West Virginia and Provo, like if the schedule works out where you're in Provo and West Virginia in 1 week on a road trip for a non-football sport.
Well, that's West Virginia what it's been like.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
that's where I think it's going to get weird is sometimes you're going to have years where the travel just falls weird because the schedule had to go this way, and you're going to have a couple travel weeks that suck, and it's going to be for volleyball, and the volleyball team's going to be like, why are we doing this? And then maybe I think that's where the realization kind of comes for everybody else with football who won't feel anything because, they would fly them there on private jets if they could.
Yeah. Okay. When we come back, go ahead.
I want to make mention